Imagine you are walking down a dirt road and you come across a physical fence. You look at it, you see no immediate purpose for it, and so you decide to tear it down. A century ago, the writer G.K. Chesterton offered a counterargument to this exact scenario. He pointed out that if you don't understand the fence's purpose, you are the exact person who should not be allowed to remove it. You have to know why it was built before you can safely take it down. Today, our fences rarely look like wood and wire. They are invisible barriers of societal competence, things like building inspections, sterile fields and operating rooms, and civil service exams. This is the core paradox of prevention. True competence runs on foresight, stopping a catastrophe before it happens. But successful prevention creates an illusion. Because no disaster occurs, the protective system appears as merely a useless obstacle in the middle of a clear road. We simply cannot see the averted disasters. And that blindness is exactly what makes us so dangerously eager to dismantle the very systems keeping us alive. These invisible fences of regulation and bureaucracy did not appear out of thin air to inconvenience us. They were paid for in human lives. Consider the fall of 1918. The influenza pandemic began striking down young, healthy soldiers right in their prime. A recruit who was fine at breakfast could be drowning in his own lungs by nightfall. This photograph shows the inside of one of those military hospital wards. Notice the sheer volume of partitioned beds and masked medical staff. In a matter of weeks, Army training camps rapidly transformed into overcrowded infirmaries and then into overflowing morgues. The military responded by treating the virus as a force protection problem. They eventually engineered the flu vaccine to act as a structural memory, a biological fence meant to protect future recruits before the threat could ever reach the barracks. A second, very different fence was built decades earlier, following the 1881 assassination of President James A. Garfield. The shooter was a man named Charles Guiteau. He wasn't a revolutionary, he was a delusional office seeker. He felt entitled to a government job, enabled by a corrupt spoils system where administrative positions were handed out purely as political favors. Following the shooting, Garfield endured a grueling 80-day decline. His death was ultimately worsened by incompetent medical care, as doctors repeatedly probed his wound with unwashed hands. Over Garfield's body, Congress passed the Pendleton Act of 1883, which established the foundation for a merit-based civil service. The underlying principle of this reform was radical. It declared that a nation's vital administrative work is too important to be handed out as a favor. The people keeping the records and running the inspections must answer to a standard of competence that outlasts political loyalty. Whether it is a medical vaccine or a civil service exam, both act as physical manifestations of institutional memory. They are engineered specifically so the next generation doesn't have to bleed to learn the exact same lessons. The problem is time. Over 70 or 80 years, the generation that witnessed the original mass casualties dies off, and the visceral memory of the disaster fades. Once the memory is gone, the public is left only with the friction of the fence itself. We see the frustrating red tape, the tax audit, the mandatory regulation, and the grievance driving the current backlash against these systems is legitimate. Modern experts and institutions frequently succumb to arrogance, they overreach, and they talk down to the public. But that frustration leaves us vulnerable to a deadly false remedy. We are being sold the idea that by firing the arrogant expert, we are fixing the system. In reality, we are accidentally deleting the underlying competence right along with them. This animation illustrates the concept of immune memory. Our institutions are not heroes. They function just like biology. They store information from prior encounters to fight off threats faster the next time around. When you dismantle that fence, the old threat doesn't suddenly become a new, easily solvable problem. It simply walks up the road and attacks a population that is now completely unprepared. Tearing down Chesterton's fence without asking why it was built guarantees one thing: the living will be forced to pay the blood price for a lesson the dead already bought.